Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 6:32 and a quorum of members is present, so the meeting of the Board of Education of the School District of New Berlin is called to order. Please call the roll.
Ms. Crosby.
Here.
Mr. Helmer.
Here.
Mr. Kurth. Here. Ms. Manley. Here. Ms. Schulz. Here. Ms. Unger. Here. Ms. Wondercheck.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn into closed session.
I move to recess into closed session pursuant to section 19.851 CE and F of the Wisconsin statutes to consider A, the approval of closed session minutes of February 24th, B, employment performance and compensation matters pertaining to staff, and C, negotiation strategies.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Kurth and a second by Ms. Manley. Please call the roll.
Mr. Kurth.
Yes.
Ms. Manley.
Yes.
Ms. Crosby.
Yes.
Mr. Helmer.
Yes.
Ms. Schulz. Yes. Ms. Unger. Yes. Ms. Wondercheck.
We are moving into closed session and will return to open session around 7 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 7:06, and we are returning from closed session into open session. In recognition of the serious and important nature of our efforts here, we will join in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Please rise.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now for those who wish to prepare for the meeting, we will have a moment of silence. This is a public meeting of the Board of Education. Prior to this meeting, notice was given to the public last Friday by posting the agenda at each district school, the district office, and the city library. The agenda was also posted on the district website. A copy of the agenda was forwarded to the Journal-Sentinel, the Waukesha Freeman, and the Waukesha Now, all of which have filed requests for all public notices. And first up on our agenda is we have the administrative team report.
Just briefly wanted to mention that we've had a lot of great events occurring at our elementary schools. Most recently, we had a Jump Into Our Future Day again over at Poplar Creek. And so, again, that's part of our career event series. I know Ronald Reagan fifth graders also went out to a junior achievement facility out in Menominee Falls for their BizTown event, which all of our fifth graders attend. And so we continue to have great events like that kind of throughout the school year. And then hopefully you'll get nice insights of the things that are happening here at Orchard Lane in a little bit. So with that, I'll hand over the rest to your student representative from New Berlin West, William.
So for the update relating to sports is that all winter sports are now complete and track and field starts today. For the update relating to activities is that National Honor Society held their annual winter blood drive and received 71 pints, and the club made fresh pancakes and grilled cheese to those who donated. Our French Honor Society held a bonbon fundraiser this past week. Art students went on a field trip to the Milwaukee Public Art Museum, and District Solo and Ensemble was last Friday, and our treble and chambers choir are going to state for their ensemble pieces, as well as 18 other solo vocal events, which is the most we've ever had. We have 7 events going for orchestra and 5 events going for band, and the theater department is putting on Snow White this upcoming weekend. The show times are Friday and Saturday at 7 and Sunday at 2. This is our middle school production, and both DECA and Academic Decathlon have their state competitions this week. You're welcome.
At this time, we'd like to ask the leadership of Orchard Lane to come up and get us started with their portion of the school update and the building tour. And when I say leadership, I'm also talking about Emily, who is the student leader that will be giving that update as well.
Hello, everybody. Thank
Hello.
you for joining us at our school tonight. Let me just get our microphone set here. Can I hear everybody? Okay. Well, let us start with some introductions, and then we'll kind of go over our goal for tonight and our presentation. So let's start with our wonderful student, Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily, and I'm a 6th grader in Miss Minchard's homeroom classroom.
Hi, I'm Susan, and I'm the teacher on leadership assignment, and previously the numeracy coach here at Orchard Lane.
And I'm Amy Fair, principal. Welcome. So with tonight and our presentation, it's a little bit different. Our slide presentation is a little shorter because when we do our school tour, we have a few classrooms where we want you to see a little bit of video with the kids in action, and then our art teacher has some artwork on display as well. So part of our presentation will roll into our tour a little bit. If you are not able to join us on the tour tonight or want to just kind of see again, we did link the video presentations that the classroom teachers will be showing at the end of this slideshow. Okay.
All right, for this school year, we had three main goals. One was to have strong literacy instruction. to increase our student literacy achievement and to really focus on character education. So for literacy focus, we had teacher learning in the areas of instructional read aloud, really a focus on preserving that literacy time. So if kids go on field trips or have special things throughout the day, that we're really preserving the academic time left over to focus on literacy. Allowing for explicit instruction in skills and strategies so we can really leverage the student learning, and extended time for students to read. So a lot of times you'll see in classrooms they have a stamina where they start with maybe 10 minutes and build up their time to 20, 30 minutes of independent reading time. Also a focus on conferring or conferencing with students. When we look at student literacy achievement, we're really trying to look at different data points. So in addition to classroom assessments, we have students with their running records, what they're reading on their Just Right levels. We also do our MAP screener where we're looking at how are they compared to students across the nation. And then we also look at different reading levels using a Fontes and Pinnell leveling. Another area for our goals for our school improvement plan is to really look at the disposition of citizenship and looking at how we can grow that and have character education in our school.
So if we dig into our first two goals in our school action plan, which focus on literacy, we'll look at MAP and F&P levels. And F&P levels are those reading levels in the classroom. Now we look at a variety of data sets to really look at the specific instruction needed for each student to close their learning gap and find success in literacy. So something interesting we noted in fall, out of our 90 kids, we had 90 below grade level when we started this school year, and that's kindergarten through 6th grade. So that's pretty good, and that's considering all students. In winter, we found it interesting that in the classroom reading level, kids are really progressing through their reading levels, their Just Right book level, because teachers are really targeting each child's individual skills and strategies they need through strategy groups and one-on-one conferring and getting very specific and using data to plan meaningful instruction. So we're at this point 39 students below grade level. Everyone else is at or above grade level. But when we looked at our MAP data that they take, we weren't seeing kind of the same growth that we want. So right now we're really investigating why and looking at some of those skills that are in that assessment to help plan meaningful instruction and really targeted strategy groups in literacy. But we think we have under 100 kids that are not on grade level, and some of the students here, they're so close, they're like a point or two away. So we're really hopeful that in spring we're gonna see a lot more continued growth.
Our third area that we really focused on was the disposition of citizenship. So that basically means good work ethic, being a good person, accepting personal responsibility. So although we're really strong in that, so in the fall we only had 61 students scoring below proficient. We had a little bit of growth and had less kids below proficient, but it is an area that we should continue to work on. It's part of our vision of the graduate under dispositions. So that's something that I'll talk about again when I talk about our character education that we're working on here at Orchard Lake.
In our classrooms, we focus on the core school values of kindness, respect, responsibility, perseverance, and integrity. If a student does something that really shines, they can get a positive principal pass. We also have our classrooms meeting their value goals within the classroom. When a classroom reaches each value or star ticket goal, they get to spin the reward wheel with Miss Marshman or Miss Fair. Rewards for meeting their character goal include bringing a stuffed animal to school, coloring time, bingo with Miss Marshman or Miss Fair, and other neat things. It is something that students look forward to doing. We also have our school events that focus on our community. Some of these events are listed here. Our students, staff, and family look forward to these events.
We lost connection with our
Yeah. Great, thanks. All right, this is the second year that we have had the opportunity to participate with Alverno in the LACES, which stands for Leadership Advancing Character and Culture in Schools, and I have been fortunate to be part of that team this year. We're working on character education, our second step lessons, social emotional learning, and really having an inclusive classroom culture and community. I'd like to read a quote from one of our teachers that really pioneered this character education, Jen Coyle, a 4th grade teacher who is really an expert at running these circles in her classroom. She said, "Character education has opened the hearts and minds of our students and staff. Character education is not taught only once a week, but within all lessons. Restorative circles have been especially helpful by creating a safe place to discuss live issues and learn about character traits. So if we're having an issue, whether it be playground or something in the classroom, pull the kids together, have a circle, and kind of talk about it right then and there."
Our goal was to provide more leadership opportunities for our students. Listed above are some of the things that students do to help our school community. Some of these things, like our mascot and broadcast team, require students to complete a job application and interview. I'd like to read a quote from a 5th grade student that reflects what many OL students feel. "Over the years, I have learned how to become responsible, respectful, and an overall amazing person."
So our kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade new phonics program is really making an impact on early student literacy skills. Our 1st grade teacher, Miss Heidi Russell, was on the district piloting team, and she's really helping move this work forward at Orchard Lane with our staff and students. So I'd like to share a quote from her with all of you tonight. "I enjoy the phonics program because it is engaging and fun for the kids. It fits perfectly with our reading and writing units. The kids love the use of games and song to teach phonics." And the picture that you see here tonight is when our school mascot, Supernova, came around to all of our 1st grade classrooms and presented them with their reading phonics detective badges. So it was a very proud moment in 1st grade, and they're all very excited to be phonics detectives.
So we know that school is not just all about academics. The kids really enjoy these special days that we have and building a community. So several times throughout the year, we have mixed grade level groups. We call it day-to-days as teachers, but for students, they really enjoy going to the art classes or their buddy classes and doing special projects. And special events like Dr. Seuss Week, 100th day of school, and Earth Day. So each time that they get together, they get to learn. It kind of builds more of a family atmosphere where they really get to know kids in other grade levels.
We participated in the National Kindness Challenge in January. Students focused on different ways they can show kindness at home, in school, and in the community. We focused on big and little acts of kindness and the effect that kindness has on others and how we feel about ourselves when we act kind.
All right, to show a compassionate community, we really try to connect. So here's some examples of ways that we've connected with the community. Orchestras played. We have high school helpers come into our classroom and work with 3rd grade, as well as duo student high school helpers come in and work in classes. Community supply drives that go back and forth, where we might be doing supply drives for people. We've had community members, businesses, organizations do supply drives with us for hats, mittens, school supplies, and then our great event of Jump Into Your Future. So this was my first year of planning it, organizing it. It was fairly successful. Got a number of new speakers to come in. Hopefully that will continue to come in.
So we're always looking at ways that we can continue to be innovative and find student success. So we're going to keep working on our details of student growth in literacy because it's that foundation that they need and applying in all subject areas. We're also really continuing to support each student in what they need, be it social, emotional, or academic, and that they find success. And when we have a student that shines in any area, be it sports, music, the arts, writing, science, makers, design thinking, prototyping. We really want to champion that and continue to build it while creating an atmosphere for everyone to explore and learn, and that's something we're very proud of here.
There are an amazing group of Orchard Lane staff that care about us and are always ready to help us learn.
So we're representing all of them for you tonight, and you'll meet a few of our teachers in a little bit. And in our audience, we have a lot of our other students and family members here tonight as well, so thank you for joining us. You are welcome to visit us at any time, especially when we're in action during the school day. If you can't make it out here during the school day, then I suggest you follow us on Facebook or Twitter, because we like to kind of showcase a variety of things happening during the day and reminders and things. So that's a good way to do that. But if you'd like a tour at a different time, just reach out to any one of us and we'd love to do that. But if we're ready, we can start our tour.
All right, we are returning from our tour. We're on the privilege of the floor. So this portion of the meeting is an opportunity for you to come and voice your concerns to the board. So please do not be offended when we quietly listen. We may even take notes. We do not immediately respond to your questions and comments. This is the time for you to talk and for us to listen. Thank you for coming to voice your comments and concerns. When I call your name, please step up to the microphone, address the chair, and state your name and address. Each presentation is to be restricted to a maximum of 3 minutes. Privilege of the floor will be limited to 1/2 hour. Presentations are not to be designed for purposes of engaging others in a debate in this forum, and discussion of certified, classified, or professional personnel or of individual Board of Education members shall not be considered an appropriate topic for this forum, and the speaker will be ruled out of order. We'll start with Beth Singer.
Or 1645 South Berlin Avenue. I just wanted to say thank you very much for coming to Orchard Lane, and I really love this idea of the board coming to all of the schools. I really appreciate the extra focus this year on the elementary schools, and I really enjoy hearing the student updates from the elementary students. I mean, it's interesting to hear the children, but it's actually really good as parents and as being part of the parent faculty committee to hear what's going on at the other elementary schools. It gives us a chance to get some new ideas. I mean, we think of some things ourselves, but just to hear what other schools are doing, it's really helpful. And I know it adds time to the meeting, so thank you all for fitting that into your schedule. And for the people that help with the video and audio, I'm sure it's much easier if you're just in one spot, but thank you for making that work. So thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the president's message. I don't really have a detailed message, but I do want to say this is our second tour of the elementary. This is actually our fourth tour. We have 2 more elementary schools to go. And I know, myself, I've been really enjoying it. I really appreciate the dinners, too, that our school or a home and school and PFC and school families provide us as well. But it's been really nice to be able to tour the buildings. Some of these buildings I haven't been in for a couple of years, so it's been nice to be here. So we'll move on to the superintendent update.
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly mention about an update I provided families last week related to influenza and coronavirus, that certainly we work with multiple sources in order to determine how best to move forward. And so not only do we rely on other fellow school districts as far as what we communicate when, who to specifically, and so on and so forth, we get a lot of guidance from the state and from the county, and then also as well from the CDC as well. So, I know that it's a very popular public in the media topic. Certainly we are prepared and are preparing for, again, what do we want to do that's preventive? What do we want to do in preparation for, say, extended periods of time? A couple things that I want to point out is that we do have several days built into the calendar. As you recall from last year with the cold days that we had, many of the other districts around us actually had to make up several days where we did not because of the length of our school day. We have days built in to kind of help meet the needs required by the state. Further, we also now, unlike back in 2009 when we were dealing with H1N1, we do now have technology at the fingertips of our students. Now we are looking at what could happen to address the needs of students in kindergarten through 3rd grade where we don't necessarily have the type of device. We're also not sure that would be the best learning format for students in those grade levels either. So we are also partnering with other school districts, our regional CISA, which is basically our consortium group, on how we're addressing those things. But know that we are preparing, and I think while it may not come to fruition like it did back in 2009 with H1N1, we are working on, and we don't necessarily consider it a waste of time. But we are looking at, again, what can we do digitally, what else can we do, and know that we've got a great team that's involved, from building leadership to teachers and to other staff, and then again, working in conjunction with the other agencies that we mentioned. So, and then nothing more important than, ultimately it's up to parents to determine what's best for their kids and their family, as far as, if there is an uptick in issues, say with the flu virus, that does tend to happen this time of year every year. If you don't feel you should be sending your child to school for whatever reason to protect them, that's up to the parents to do so. Also, the responsibility of the parent, if a student does have a fever, that we ask them to keep the student at home too. And then just the basic wash your hands, don't, keep your fingers away from your face, and all that stuff that I think, yeah, Kristen, right, exactly, see. So it's just doing those basic things that I think, again, we'll continue to monitor it, but some of this we can't control the uncontrollable, but we will certainly be prepared to deal with it as necessary.
Okay, thank you. Next item is our consent agenda. Are there any items that should be pulled out for separate consideration? Do I have a motion?
Move to approve as presented.
Motion by Ms. Manley, second by Mr. Kurth to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Hands down. All opposed? Motion passes. On to our regular agenda. Item A on our regular agenda is the long-range facility update.
So as the board may be aware, we've actually provided similar handouts to you like you see in front of you here. Now, we haven't been to Reagan yet, but at the schools that you've been at, Eisenhower, West, now Orchard Lane, and Elmwood, we gave you a handout of the things that that the administration has put together. I do want to clarify that what was put together here for these priorities and considerations has been at least presented to the facilities committee, but it has not necessarily been, say, approved by the committee. And so what we were asked to do at the last board meeting was to share with the full board the items that had been shared with the committee. And so, we certainly don't want to, we just want to clarify that the committee themselves have not given their actual blessing to this, but thought, I know, Janet had mentioned that this was helpful to you as a committee member, and so therefore, to share it with the full board. I'm not going to necessarily read through everything. I know that we were able to get the handouts to people in the audience, but obviously, again, we have provided what between what we had in our previous long-range facility plan, and again, with previous administration with Roger Dixon, we now have a new CFO, COO in Patrick. And now, with him coming on, and then some of the updates that Andy's been able to pull together, this is what they then brought to the facilities committee for their recommendation of things that need to be done. Now, we don't necessarily want to get into the funding of all of these things, because I know there have been a lot of discussions with the facilities committee on, and maybe not so much here with these first few, but you look at like Orchard Lane, for example, and even just earlier today we talked about, the playground section, and some of the questions. I mentioned playground, but I'm not trying to, focus on that. But if you look at some of the things that, say, also we've got playground issues over at Poplar Creek, but then if you look at Eisenhower, you're looking at the track, you're looking at some things with, the gym bleachers, football bleachers. Some of the things that have come up at the committee level is that something we can get help with from booster clubs or other areas of support where it's not necessarily coming out of the district's general fund. And again, similar with the playground equipment, is that something that could be fundraised in conjunction with the local home and schools? And so, again, know that that wasn't necessarily what we were tasked to do. It was really just to bring you those items in a priority list from Andy and Patrick's office. And so that's what we have. And again, I'm not going to read through everything. People in the audience do have copies of it. And we are looking at specifically what we were asked to do was if we had to prioritize within a set number, for example, we did end up with a budget surplus this year that was recently audited and affirmed of just over $700,000 from last year to this year. Again, the audit just came through, I believe it was 2 meetings ago, and that was verified. And so, should the board consider doing something with the surplus, that is kind of what we thought we'd bring to you, is if because these aren't necessarily allocated in the budget right now. And so, someone may ask, well, if you had these priorities, where would you get the money from? That's where we would recommend that you do, is get that either from the surplus and or your respective fund balance, otherwise known as the savings account that the board has. If you recall, we also had a surplus in the budget 2 years ago as well, which was much higher than the $700,000. And again, that was as a result of a very positive outcome on our health insurance. Excuse me. And not only health insurance, but because we're self-insured, we had individuals that actually met a really high level, and so we actually got reimbursed because they exceeded, our Janet, what's our stop loss. And so when they hit that threshold, say it's $250,000, and they expend, say $700,000, we get a reimbursement back, or actually we just don't pay that to the company. We are able to keep that. So that's how we were able to see those surpluses in those years. So we took kind of a varied approach of, if the board were to allocate dollars to us based on some of the surpluses that we've had, we could do it in one of two ways. We could either do bigger projects that are higher priority, or do a larger quantity of high priority, smaller projects. And so we actually did it. And the first one was, if you were to do the things that, and basically these are the top three things that we think need to happen sooner than later. And these are literally in rank order. And so the very first thing that we would ask, and so the board was able to actually tour the rear lot here, as well as the playground area, earlier today. It was absolutely miserable, but we were able to have a nice look at the pavement back there. And we believe that is, if we were to continue the same footprint that we currently have as a school district, that would be our number one priority. The second priority would be that of finishing and upkeeping the tuck pointing in the exterior of Eisenhower School. Now, obviously, we just put in a couple new walls at Eisenhower, but there's also a lot of brick at Eisenhower that needs essentially maintenance and preventive maintenance, hence the tuck pointing. We also have the drainage grates and the exterior doors at Elmwood. And then we also have the replacement of the battery backup, essentially, of the main server over at New Berlin West. Depending on what the board would do, and again, what this amount here equates to the $700,000+ that, so you may wonder, well, what number were you working backwards from? We were assuming you were going to give us all that to work with. And so as a result of that, it would be all of these things, along with either the Orchard Lane Playground, which, by the way, right now we are currently working with the home and school on, and also possibly the city on, as we know, they're doing some work, and so maybe we could, buying power with the city, and is this a priority of the home and school? We're not there yet, but we at least wanted to mention that to you, or we would look at doing something with the Ike bleachers, which are mainly for updated safety precautions there. So let me go back to, again, and then if you look at the packet that you have in front of you, we're prepared to say of the other high priority items that we could do, maybe not to the full tune of $700,000+, but we think we could knock off about 10 high priority projects that are at lesser cost and still address those that would not include the ones that we just mentioned here. But again, these are in rank order. Again, as far as the Elmwood piece, we do believe we can. There are some things that we could do, with the replacement of the battery backup as well, that could happen within Andy's budget, since those are quite smaller pieces. Of the $700,000, you're looking at the majority of that being eaten up by the project at Orchard Lane, where the others would be less and less. The other pieces that we want to mention regarding the Orchard Lane work is that we have received word from the city that there have been provisions in either the MMSD and or the DNR that will require us to have to do retention ponds in areas and school areas that we currently don't have them if we are doing updated asphalt projects. So the two places where that would occur is one would be here at Orchard Lane, and the second would be at Poplar Creek, which are the two schools that currently do not have retention ponds. Please know that we're looking at a pretty substantial increase in cost if we were to wait and then be required to install those retention ponds. And so, you know, we are looking at this as a priority, and with the essence of time being at the top of mind as well. And so, you know, again, you know, should the board want to wait, you know, another year, please note that that's a caveat that should we wait, we're looking at paying more for the project than we currently are looking at now. The other piece that we want to share related to the Orchard Lane project is that, you know, between Andy and I and Patrick, we worked with those that bid on the project last summer. And of those folks that bid on the project, and I think we mentioned there were either 4 to 5 firms that bid on it, and we'll get those bids to the board. I had asked Andy to circle back with the contractor to see if they would be willing to honor the low bid, or the contractor that won the low bid, if they would be willing to hold on that bid price from last year, and it ends up that they are willing to hold, time permitting, because as their schedules start ramping up and their calendar, and they start booking projects, then we're at the mercy of, you know, whether they have time to do it this summer or not. And then again, as mentioned prior to, if you're not doing it at this summer, then there is risk that there would be added costs as a result of these new requirements for retention ponds in areas that don't currently have them. Again, you know, the tuck pointing at Eisenhower, we believe, is another. Again, it's something that will help alleviate costs in the long run. You're not looking at, it's probably about a quarter of the cost of the project at Orchard Lane. And then really the two at Elmwood and West are relatively minor in cost, but end up being significant projects that we believe do need to get done. And so what we are seeking from the board tonight specifically is at least some sort of direction on the Orchard Lane work, again, for all the reasons that we mentioned. While we would also like some sort of direction on, you know, how much money do we have to work with, if any, and if we were to be able to utilize more of those dollars, we could bid out the work for Eisenhower and possibly Elmwood and West, depending on how much the board wants to work with that surplus that we had as a result of this year. We are not necessarily looking at approval of everything that we have here at this time, but we do believe that we need to have a prioritized list of our long-range facilities needs approved by the board in the next month or two, so that we can start pulling together the projections for a 5-year forecast. Again, as you know, we were able to balance this year. We know that we are balanced next year. As you get out to years 3, 4, and 5, and the biennial budget is no longer, and we have, you know, that new opportunity for things to change, to either the good or the bad. Things get, you know, a little hairier, but I know that the board wants some sort of projections no later than June, and we would prefer actually sooner than that. So again, that's why it would be important, for whether it's going back to the facilities committee or being talked about at the full board. We're not necessarily seeking the approval tonight for that, but maybe some direction on where it goes next would be nice to know too. How can we help us get there?
Well, you know, certainly the cost avoidance of the retention pond is important, right? I guess my question is the Orchard Lane, looking at the write-up and looking at the Poplar Creek, they're very similar. One just is a greater priority, but then Poplar Creek doesn't make it to the top of the list at all. I'm just wondering if someone can share why.
Yeah, actually, first of all, I'd like Andy to actually step up to the microphone. It's just not to the same degree that Orchard Lane is.
Okay,
So, as we rank them by school need, that's at the top of the list. But when we took it from a district-wide need, Orchard Lane superseded that of Poplar Creek.
okay,
And then not knowing how much money we had to work with, we certainly were going to try and live within at least those means for starters. So.
okay. So I guess he answered your question, Andy.
Yeah, he did a good job on that. But basically, Joe's right. At Poplar Creek, we can manage that parking lot yet for a little while. And so that one's okay. But as you saw over here, this one's beyond managing it anymore, so.
So again, I like the offset of the retention pond. What was that? It's 100,000, is that, or ballparking? Or maybe we're not supposed to discuss that, sorry. But then we're gonna have that with, my only concern is we're gonna have that down the road with Poplar Creek, right? So it's just because we only have so much bandwidth, and that was how it, okay. And then when
We
you said.
only have so much money and so much time,
Sure,
and we have to try to manage all of that. So
Okay.
that's our challenge. And things are gonna change from year to year, and they're never gonna relax.
okay.
So it's just a matter of, now we're gonna take all that information and redo our long-range plan for asphalt and see, how that's gonna impact that.
So then, you had said it can last a little bit longer?
Yeah,
Couple years, decade?
it's hard to say.
Okay, couple years,
Couple years, I would
okay.
think.
So not a decade.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Do you think that the tuck pointing at Eisenhower is a higher priority, though, than the parking lot at Poplar Creek?
Right now, I would say yes.
And again, the other, it's back to that same reason is we didn't go that far with it because we didn't think we had that much money to work with. So we were literally only working within the means of the just over the $700,000.
Well, that's a fraction of the cost. Tuck pointing's 1/4 or 1/5 of the parking lot, probably.
That's correct.
The one thing I noticed on every parking lot is there's a little blurb that says this area of parking lot drive was not designed for vehicle traffic. How is it that all 4 elementary schools were driving vehicles on areas that weren't supposed to be? Was that design?
It's safety now,
Yes.
And that's my understanding is that when my oldest started kindergarten, we could walk right in the building, pick them up, walk right out of the building. Eventually, it became a point where you needed to start driving behind the building to pick them up. So they weren't designed, the parking lots weren't designed for parent pickup the way, so it's all safety related now, is my understanding.
We changed that back in 2011. So to give you an example, a really good one is Elmwood. What happened at Elmwood was the bus pickup was in front of the building to start with. And then all of the parents had to line up on Sunny Slope Road. That was causing a big traffic problem and a big safety issue. So then the police came and said, we need to do something. And then that's how we decided, well, the best way to get all those parents off the street is to go around back. That was only supposed to be an emergency drive for fire or rescue or whatever. So that's how that started getting driven on all the time. There's no way that would hold up the bus traffic. So, but the front part of the school was designed for that front drive. So
Makes sense. So these repairs, as the cost out, that makes it so it's favorable to traffic?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The way it's currently laid out today.
So the costs have that built in of making those,
Correct.
beefing them up to get them to that.
Yep.
Well,
And as mentioned during the asphalt tour out back, we've got patches on patches, and the lot was rebuilt over an old lot. what's being proposed here is literally going down to the ground level, restarting that base and building it all the way up, with the requirements that it can handle the traffic that we were just discussing.
I think one thing that's important too, then we talked about it when we were on our tour. I know, Andy, you mentioned that if we dig down to the dirt, we dig it all out the way we're supposed to instead of continuing to patch, that replacing it will give it about a 20-year life.
Correct.
So that's a pretty good investment for us. So.
So I don't see this written up as a formal motion, but you're looking for one?
We would like either approval or some sort of direction particular to the Orchard Lane pavement for sure. And then secondarily, you know, not sure where the board's at, but, you know, if tuck pointing or the other couple items are an item that need to be tabled, understandable, because they're not as timely, but they are still timely because we would need to get bids out and quotes out so we can book the work for this summer.
So just a quick question for those that are on the facilities committee. Are you looking to meet again, or are you not looking to do that?
We have a meeting scheduled.
I think it's
It's on Monday,
16th,
the 16th,
Yeah.
6 to 8.
this month, the 16th.
They keep me in check.
Yes, we do.
I'm flipping through my calendar. Yeah, so we were waiting on the LED. We're going to get the LED proposal this week. We're going to review
Yes.
it via email. And then Monday, we were going to go through the LED proposal, come back, LED and this, and come back at the next following meeting with recommendations / proposals or next steps.
Okay.
The biggest thing for me is getting the proposals that we talked about on the parking lot here and just being able to review those and making sure that everything makes sense for me. That's the big steps for me before I weigh in and take a stance on whether we do it or not.
So it sounds like you guys want a decision before the next meeting, but there's plans to have something prepared for the next meeting?
We would like a decision before next meeting, and in fact, if we have to wait until the next meeting, we would recommend a special meeting be scheduled before the next regularly scheduled board meeting.
So I feel like we should pick an amount that we can agree on, and it should be up to Andy and Patrick how they spend that money. So if this is their prioritized list, I believe that these are the priorities of our district. So I feel like we should look at that $700,000 surplus and say, we either want to allow them to spend all of it, we want to go with $500,000. What number are we comfortable with them spending? And then they choose the projects that are the highest priority that fit within that budget. I'd go for the whole $700,000.
I would not.
There's no reason to.
I mean, I feel like that money was pretty much spent, and now it's a bonus money back, and it's not like this list is it. The list of facilities needs is endless, so.
But
I would be comfortable with 500 as well if you guys are
We're also
not.
looking at deficits in the next, not this year, but the year after. There's a small one, and we were told the next two could be a little bit bigger. I think we need to be careful with this extra money that we have right now that we were very fortunate to have. So I would not want to start spending it all just because we suddenly, have it.
Yeah, I agree. I think we got to make it. I think the Orchard Lane one with the $100,000, the X amount of extra cost. I think that's the biggest priority for us, but I don't know that we need to take a decision in the next week on the rest of them. I think we definitely have 2 to 4 weeks or whatever, because otherwise, we need to discuss it in the facilities and come back with. Yeah.
I'd also like to see with the facility committee what your options are for funding as well for the rest of them.
No, and again,
Does anybody want to make a motion for the Orchard Lane or a dollar amount to be used out of the
Can I
surplus?
just jump in?
Yeah.
If you are going to make a motion to proceed with the Orchard Lane back playground, could you include in the motion funding to come from fund balance?
Because the surplus is in fund balance right now? Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. And what is, just really quickly, I was looking, so capital project funds, we were talking about a little bit. What is Fund 46?
Fund 46 is a long-range capital capital fund, where if you're going to put dollars into that, those dollars have to age for, I believe it's a 5-year period of time, and you have to have a long-range facilities plan in order to put the dollars in that. Fund 41 is also a long-range capital fund, and the difference is you can use your dollars immediately in Fund 41. They both have similar advantages as far as shared cost to the district, but the only difference is Fund 41 you can use right away.
And would it, as we get these surpluses and start tagging some of it for, for our long-range facility, does it make sense to put it into that fund?
If we're going to be designating dollars to be used for capital maintenance, my recommendation would be that when we set our tax levy every year, that, for example, if you're going to authorize us to spend $500,000, say $500,000 on this project, that when I'm putting together the recommendation for the next budget, that I would recommend we levy dollars, instead of levying it into Fund 10, we levy it into Fund 41, knowing that that $500,000 is going to be there in fund balance. It just is it's a better fund to use for those purposes. It can carry its own fund balance for future capital maintenance projects. And again, it reduces the shared cost to the district, which, because we're a negative tertiary district, that's advantageous to us.
Okay, great.
In a nutshell, does that mean we get more of a portion of the state aid formula?
What it means is, not right now, but over time, the longer we levy into Fund 41 and we keep taking those projects out of the shared cost, and every year you do that, it lowers, it essentially amortizes what you've spent over a longer period of time, and it lowers your shared cost over time.
Okay.
Is there a minimum we have to put in there? Like, can we put $300,000 or $200,000, or is there?
There's really no minimum that you can put in there.
I just want to make sure we're not doing extra paperwork and requiring you to file a bunch of stuff if we're. Okay.
No, and that's why I actually like Fund 41, because it gets the same thing done. There's actually less restrictions on that. The only thing is you can only use it for capital maintenance. So, projects like this, we can't use it to pay our own people to do work in the district. This is where we're contracting work.
Okay.
Well, you might be surprised by this, because, I'd like to tee it up. I mean, the cost avoidance is so significant, and we have to do it. It's inevitable. It's the first thing on the list. So I would be prepared tonight to put that up for a vote, if the rest of the board is.
And you can make
Okay,
a motion.
I will make a motion then. I move that we spend just enough to repair the parking lot. I would hold off on the playground at this point, because there might be some other creative fundraising things we can do in that area.
But do you want to add the playground concrete or the asphalt there as part of that too?
And we would not recommend that either at this time.
Okay.
Sorry.
Nope.
I
Thank
just
you.
want to make.
Thank you. But again, not to exceed the low bid amount, so that we can secure the business from the year prior. So I don't know how we have to put that in there and use fund balance.
Susan, just can we all just clarify that the low bid did not include the 10% contingency?
Oh, correct. Thank you.
So
Plus the contingency of 10%.
with the contingency.
Correct. Thank you. Diana, did that make any sense whatsoever? Okay.
Joe had to mix it up, of course. We're just teasing.
What I'm hearing the board say is that you're approving the low bid from last year so that we don't have to go out and rebid.
Correct.
Plus the 10% contingency.
Yep.
For the project here at Orchard Lane that does not include the playground section at this time.
Correct. Correct, using fund balance and the cost avoidance of the retention fund.
And I just want to ask a question of clarification. When you say it doesn't include the playground section, we're talking about that orange playground that's on wood chips, right?
Correct.
So,
No.
but all the area in the back that's currently asphalt paved, is that wrong, Andy?
It's the blue playground area.
The south.
The yellow or the orange is a newer playground section, and that one's fine.
You're talking about the one on the northern side.
I think there might be orange pieces in it, but the
yeah.
poles are blue.
The poles are blue.
Okay, I'm talking about the playground set that has the tunnels that my son likes to play in. Do we
That's
all know
probably
that
the one.
That's the one that's on the southern end. Is
Yes.
the one
The
I'm
bigger
Yes,
one,
correct.
right? The bigger
So
playground.
that's
That's
the
the one.
one that needs to be replaced.
Correct.
Yes.
Because there are no more parts for that
Right.
operation anymore.
Correct.
Okay, so that structure currently in this proposal stays.
Correct.
We're
It
not-
stays as is, correct.
And we're just talking about the asphalt that surrounds that area.
Correct.
All the way between the bounding by the building and the wood chips or the grass,
Correct.
correct? Okay.
So I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. A motion by Ms. Manley, a second by Mr. Kurth. Any discussion?
Go.
I was under the impression that we wanted to get rid of that playground and replace that as well. And if we got that poured at the same time as this, it essentially wouldn't add a lot of cost to us.
We will continue to gather that information for you,
Okay.
but we at least wanted to get this portion of it pulled together as soon as possible.
To maintain that low bid.
Correct.
Did the bid include that area, the playground
No.
area?
No.
It did not, okay.
And
And
there's
ag-
not,
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, and not knowing exactly, again, where we're at with the home and school organization here, I don't want to speak for them, and I don't want to get too far ahead of them. And so, I just don't know if this is a priority for them or not. And/or, like, if so, how much are they willing to support, not support? Yeah, we're just, I think, just too far out in order to make that determination. And we need to get the specific dollars as it relates to that, too.
Correct.
Yeah, and I just from my perspective, I'd like to, start looking at these a little bit more proactively, so we're not making these decisions, in a meeting. We're more looking at it more at the committee level and making it brought. But I think using that Fund 41 and building it into our budget each year, and then instead of voting on each individual project, really leaving it up to the you guys, administration, and to be able to, what needs to be repaired and where in kind of what timing. So I think we're getting on the right track. So I would say that this is, start to get it where we're building it into the budget. We have a certain amount, we know what you're going to spend, and then you can start planning those projects out. So that's where I'd like to get to. All right, any other discussion?
Mitch, you had mentioned wanting to see the other bids that were given
Yeah, that's my
before
concern
making a
with taking
decision.
the vote today is, we're just getting
I'm just
a lot.
curious why. Why is that?
There's a lot of information that was added today, and I just don't like making a decision with 10 seconds on the clock on something. I hope that we can, like Amy had said, I hope that we get more time to think this through.
And I think that, I'm sure that Joe would be willing to provide the bids to us, even voting on it tonight, even if we come to a resolution, just if you wanted to take a look at the bids and, have questions about it, because it's probably instructive to learn from in the future, right? I mean, so probably wouldn't be a bad idea to continue down that path, even if a final vote passes tonight. More information is probably better than less.
Let's vote. All right. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Hands down.
Everyone's hands go up.
Mine's unofficial.
All right, motion passes. This brings us to item B, update on facility rentals.
All right, so this is really just an update to the board on where we're at with facility rentals, and we do have some Some updates from the last time, we provided a presentation to the board on facility rentals. And meanwhile, I'm going to hand out a rough draft that has unedited notes on it. Sorry, Dave, but it's so worthy of sharing with you that I can't just keep it to myself. But if you could just pass it down and make sure I get it back. Essentially, what we're looking at is kind of moving the needle forward as it relates to our facilities rental. And some of the things that that we wanted to know for our sake was, how are we actually doing with facility rental? So we know how much we are bringing in for revenues and how much the costs are, but how do we compare? Like, are we doing well? Are we really stinking it up? How do we compare, and then maybe why? Why is it that we do that? And so we surveyed Southeast Wisconsin school districts from various sizes of school districts, and asked them essentially what type of rental revenue are they experiencing, and what type of facilities do they have, and then what staffing and resources do they utilize in order to manage those revenues and expenses. Fortunately, we were able to get 27 total respondents. Not everybody responded, but we can only do so much to request the information. And so as a result of that, let us just actually start by circling back to information that had already been presented to the board. And we bring in a gross revenue amount of about $156,000, or at least we did last year. And then it's broken down here as basically like our top 14 or 15 organizations is who's providing most of that revenue for us. And again, I'm not going to read this to you, but there certainly is a big difference with, from these 14 all the way down to anybody then thereafter. Like I said, this doesn't equate to 156,000, but these are your top revenue generators. So really good partners that we have there. So ends up, we're actually doing okay as it relates to revenue being generated for our facilities rentals. And so, again, one of the issues is, what problem are we trying to fix? And or realistically, what should we be expecting as far as, are we going to get rich, renting our facilities, or what can we be doing differently in order to generate more revenue? Well, we're doing okay. But then the question is, because when I look at us compared to Elmbrook, who, is a bigger district and they have 2 high schools, we're generating more revenue than they are. So that's great. But then how is it that Whitefish Bay or even Cudahy is generating more money than we are? And so we kind of dug a little bit further into that. And there were several factors that really kind of came to a head as far as of the facilities that we compare with the other districts, and not necessarily just the people that were ahead of us, but the districts that that we compared ourselves to. Of the 27, 12 have turf football fields, 3 have multiple turf fields, and 18 have performing arts centers. Now, Patrick, just a point of clarification, is this of the 27, not just, the 27, right?
This is of the 27.
Okay. So that's interesting to note. Here's where we get into a bit deeper. Of the top 10 earning districts, 6 of the 10 actually have the turf football fields. And when we say football fields, they are sometimes a combo with soccer, depending on the school district. 3 have the multiple turf fields. We don't have any. And then of those top 10, 7, have performing arts centers. And again, we're proud of the revenue that's actually being generated from the Westpac.
Just curious, because what you said about Cudahy, right? That one really throws me off. And to your point, Whitefish Bay as well.
Yeah.
Just based on the size of the district.
Yep.
Smaller than ours. Do either of those have the turf? Is that where you're going with that?
Whitefish Bay has multiple. And Whitefish Bay also has several agreements with larger groups like we have with Anita's Dance that are providing a substantial amount of revenue for their fields. Because their fields are turf, it's easier for outside organizations to rent those out and bank on being able to use them, because it's not weather sensitive.
And
Okay, just
typically, they
curious.
actually have lights too, so they can actually stay out there longer, particularly like in the fall.
Thank you.
And again, note that we are not advocating for turf fields in this presentation.
I'm very
What we
glad
are
to hear that.
advocating for is setting ourselves a realistic purview of what we should expect with revenue generation with the facilities that we do have.
Thank you.
But then to lastly note, West is also the only Woodland Conference school with no outdoor plumbing. So how do we compare even further? The resources staffing dedicated to the facility rentals. So one of the things that we had talked about is, should we hire somebody to run a more efficient system and or try and recruit folks to use our facilities? And so I know one of the questions when we had that informal discussion is, well, what's the ROI on that? And that's a great question. Really the ROI at this point that we are actually seeing is that you're going to be running a more efficient operation, but I don't think you're going to recoup all those costs. And so it's really hard for us to be able to say, invest those dollars, and if you're thinking we're going to make that plus some, that's likely not to happen. And so, again, we've got a couple other pieces here. Most of the districts do have a single point of contact. We do not. 10 of the 27 utilize the Community Service Fund for coordination of facilities. We're starting to do that more, but certainly not as much as other districts, and we'll get into that in a second. And then really there is like we are actually ahead of the game as it relates to starting to market this work. And as you can tell, with the nice little handout, and again, that will be in digital format as well and beyond. And then I know I've been talking to Brandon, who, as we look at our schools software that we currently use, we can actually maximize that even more than we currently are, where we could, for example, take a picture like we have here and say, this is the facility you're renting, here's more detail, and here's some pictures that go with it. Or, maybe you span and take a look at it, like you do. I know, like when I was, we were looking for a facility for a meeting, and it was like you were able to kind of pan the hotel room, or the room in the hotel or wherever it is that you're looking to rent. So, but again, we at least are looking to and have some sort of strategy to move forward, which is kind of nice to know. The other piece is that this is the other biggest thing that we noticed is, while some of the districts have enhanced facilities compared to what we have, so that includes turf and lighting. So you think about like our soccer fields at Ike and West, which are really big money generators for some of these other districts. We don't have lights there, So not only do we not have artificial turf, we also don't have the lights, and so you have a limited time that can be spent on those fields. The other piece is that we recognized is that your Mequon, Thiensville, your Whitefish Bay, and some of these other bigger districts, but at least two of the districts that are ahead of us, they actually rent out the school district facilities in order to house the park and rec programs and the park and rec staff. So let me get into that a little bit further. And I'll get that in a second. It's actually the last bullet point in this next slide. But the other things that we need to kind of realize too is that we are going to be in competition with other people that have facilities. So, I think about there's a New Berlin Sportsplex that's being proposed to be built out on the new Prospect Hill property. That's not our property anymore. We sold that. Just a point of clarification. We sold that, but it is being proposed, and there would be significant indoor facilities for baseball, softball, basketball, and so on. And so right now, yeah, we do have baseball and softball using our indoor facilities, but if they had a choice, and the booster clubs pay for some of that, and they pay for some of that off-site, that would be the place to be going to. But again, that's a proposed complex. We also have things like the former Moreland Tennis and Pickleball Club, and some other places where, again, we are at capacity because we've only got so much indoor space that's being used. So, we can, and then typically like our peak time is after school till about 9 p.m. And for the most part, and I think you can ask Crislin this, is that indoor space is typically filled up. Yep. And so there's not a lot of, and then you also include the weekends, and there's really not a lot of like this leftover time to be able to, okay, I'm going to recruit, let's say, Scott's basketball team to come in. Well, when's the time going to happen? Like, they're already booked. Right. So, but those are things that, again, we can kind of get into. Parks and other school districts for outdoor spaces, again, the city is looking to add a park over by Mitch's place down in section 35. And so, again, less need for them to use the facility if they can get the park space, that's provided by the city. And again, why not maximize the space that we have? But again, I'm just, clarifying that, sure, even though we put a strategy together, there's also all these other options that could go with it. There are also various businesses. There's another hotel being built, for 9 to 5 meeting and conference spaces, and so, I was talking to a gentleman, actually Chris Motes, who comes here, and he helped us put some of this together. And, he works for Denali, and what they do is they just clear out their floor because they have space. It's just, so they find ways to creatively save costs themselves. And so they are learning more and more to just utilize the spaces that they have. So it mitigates the need to get out and try and find places like within the school district per se. Let's talk about Hickory Grove. So as you all know, there was a deal made back in the 80s, and I don't know if any of us were here for that, where basically we gave the building to the city for $1. Well, so that is where the city hosts their park and rec, and that is where the park and rec staff, as well as park and rec programs. And so, like the districts that we mentioned that are able to garner revenue from hosting the staff and park and rec events, we do too, but we gave that away back in the 80s. So, that potential revenue is not available at this time. Although, it's an aging building. At some point, maybe the city doesn't want to sink any additional costs into that facility. And so, maybe, but I'm not sure we want to hold on to it either, if we were to get it back. So, but again, point being is that opportunity is not available to us where, that could be a potential, where we could maybe get that extra 100 or 150 grand. It's just not an option for us at this time. And so essentially, again, our key findings is that, some districts have a single point of contact. We do not. If you wanted one, yes, it would make things better and more efficient, but it's going to come at a cost. And there may not be a return on investment for it. And then again, the next piece is, I think it's nice to know that we at least have a plan of, we're not going to just sit on our hands, but at the same time, how much time should we be spending on the potential of, if I got Patrick or Andy or whoever, it's, their time and effort, how much of that time should we really be spending if there's not a lot of potential there for major revenue. Certainly you could charge more for the groups that already use our stuff. I think about like, okay, we charge all the youth groups, but Crislin, all she's going to do is, you just charge, it all rolls down, so it's going to be down to the kid user, and, our fees are already pretty substantial, and to just, to add that. But again, certainly if that's the direction that the board wants to go, we would certainly look to entertain that. And again, as we look to, maybe, this is not something that we would suggest that we do within Fund 10, but, maybe, some, the foundation, if they're looking to raise some money and some efforts, maybe this is something that they could focus their energy on, where it could actually be a revenue generator for the district, as they look to, maybe raise funds. And again, I don't want to speak for them, but this could be a potential an area that they actually could focus on, where it's not necessarily coming out of the district's Fund 10 budget. So really, without these enhancements, most the outdoor facilities are already maxed out. Our other facilities are also near usage capacity. You know, does the board want to pursue a facilities manager position? I'm not sure that you would. Again, preliminarily when we discussed, if you're not going to get your money back and then some, then not sure that's a potential. And then, the last piece that I would still be interested in hearing more about is, could we, similar to what St. Elizabeth Seton does or Holy Apostles or other actual schools, would we allow for one-time cost or one-time permits for alcohol use on the school grounds? Obviously not with kids around or during the school day. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking for special events. Like again, that other private schools are doing, why couldn't we be doing something similar? I think about our football boosters, or like even most recently we did a big beer and wine tasting for West Athletics, and we had to hold it in Muskego. And they're like, we're paying the middleman, and so we're not reaping the revenue that we possibly could. I know that my son plays baseball, and we did a beer and wine tasting at the Ale House. And again, I don't want to take necessarily revenue away from our local businesses, but if we're talking about generating revenue, this could be a way that we could do that. And again, obviously we don't want to tarnish our good reputation of having alcohol available at all times. That's not what we would be doing. It would be for special events run by, say, like either the booster clubs or the foundation, and again, certainly with permission of the board. And so, I guess these are the things that we'd be seeking some direction on. And I think at this point, there's not a major sense of urgency, like what we were talking with at least the Orchard Lane parking lot. But some direction, I think, would be great at this time.
As far as the policy on alcohol in school grounds, I've often thought that was a strange aspect of our policy, that when we didn't, when we had school events, if there weren't going to be kids there, which is how it would have to be formulated, I think that it would be financially advantageous for us, since we have so much facility space available, that in those evening windows when we didn't have kids around, that it could be a vehicle for fundraising. So I wouldn't be opposed to a change in the policy that would allow that on special occasions that were sanctioned by the board.
Correct.
It would have to be on a case-by-case basis determined if we were going to allow it, so that we could have some control over what those kinds of events were. But I think that when you take out the middleman, I think that you're going to raise more money, and that's in everybody's interest. So, and I also think that as far as, I know you're saying, Joe, that, it looks like we're kind of right in line with where we should be given the size of our district and the facilities that we have available when you consider other districts. And I think that's good to know. I don't know that we can do a lot to change what our facilities income is based on those factors, but I think it's important to have done the exercise, so I'm glad that you did it. I do think that perhaps we should probably, when you say that the one issue that we don't, the one big issue that could make things better for us and increase our, usability, I guess, of our facilities is the addition of lights and turf, right? Those are two big expenses. But if we could reach out to the booster clubs, because the booster clubs at Ike and West are big booster clubs. They raise a lot of money. And if they know of this need, that could be a cooperative venture for all of us where we could all benefit in the end. So maybe if we could sort of have a more coordinated effort to reach out to those groups and say, hey, this is something that we were thinking would be good for us as a district if you guys could get on board, and we could have some kind of a long-range plan to do this, because we don't want to eclipse whatever other priorities these groups have, but with our priority, but to let them know that this is something we're thinking about that we could all benefit from and collaboratively work together to achieve. I think that might be helpful. So does that make sense?
Yep.
So
I'll second that on the alcohol policy. I believe that we probably lose half of our fundraising money whenever we're paying whatever organization or whatever restaurant or business we're going to on that. We talked before on the full-time person for the facilities manager. Would that still come out of community fund service?
It could, but even despite that, one of the questions was, and again, so what does that mean? So while it's not impacting the structural deficit, it still impacts the taxpayer. And so, that is why, some of these other districts actually do have it, because it is the epitome of community service. And that's really what it is. So we kind of backed off the idea just only because we don't necessarily think you're going to realize that ROI in that position, though. Would it be beneficial? It could be, but you're not going to get your money back and then again get that extra, say, $100,000 generated. We're just not seeing that. But
Yeah, I completely agree, and I was very adamant before that we didn't do a full-time position, but I would like to see us have someone put together a website, like you said, get pictures of this, take that burden off our current maintenance staff that's doing the paper forms and everything. So I'd like to have someone come in and do that and build that for us so that you guys aren't having to do that. And I think that we probably could support a part-time person doing that long-term in terms of managing that day-to-day. So not one person or a company build that website, put that whole package together, and then maybe a part-time person. Because I think the two things that we need to focus on that are probably underutilized based on the numbers coming in are the 2 swimming pools and a PAC. There's just there's not a lot of places in New Berlin that have pools. So you Princeton Club, the Y, that's true, in the corner. But I think that's a big asset that we have. I think it was like $12,000 in revenue.
yeah, and one of the things, for example, that we're trying to garner more revenue, and then even working with the city, they're backing off because they can't even get lifeguards or people to supervise the locker rooms.
Yeah. I think that's a tough one because you're not going to get a lot there. But I think if we can try to poach another swim team from somewhere else, I think that's where you're going to get $10,000 or $20,000 that you might be able to help with that.
Sure. And again, that we actually have talked about the part-time version of that, for all the reasons that you just mentioned, where again, maybe you'll at least recoup some of that.
Well, and then, like you said, it's a community service because right now booking something, no one knows where to go. It's not centralized. I think if we do break even for the first couple of years, I think it's an asset to the community, and we're talking a couple $1,000s. It's not like we're paying a couple $100,000 for it. So I'm in support of that. I don't know what anyone else thinks of it.
Yeah, we could.
Having someone come in, build a website, centralize everything that we have, get it all as a cohesive piece that someone can click on a website, rent this room, put a credit card in, it's done. It goes into a booking system that has all the schedules and everything in there, and then looking at a part-time position to manage facility rental and just kind of the upkeep of everything. I don't know what that looks like, but that would have to come back, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like that shouldn't be difficult. I would think that that's somewhat out there. I think of just renting conference rooms in, our facilities at work and their software, so I don't know. I'd be cautious to spend much money here, though. I was pleasantly surprised to see where we fell in this, looking at these different locations and the size of districts they are. That was very surprising to me in a positive way. The one thing that works against us is the 2 high schools, because we have 2 facilities we have to maintain, 2 tracks, which came up today. And again, I know that's a topic that we're not talking about, but it seemed appropriate here. But I mean, there is, if you do turf at one, do you do turf at the other? There's all these decisions and cost and equity within the district. So, right now, I don't see this as a moneymaker for us, given all the other things that we have going on, and I wouldn't put much effort beyond what we're doing today.
And again, just a reminder that this was one of the things that the budget balancing task force had asked to prioritize, and then when we took their list, we then narrowed that list down by the board, and this was within the top 3. And so that's why, again, we felt it important to do this exercise, and again, also just clarify expectations for us all. Like, what problem are we solving? Okay, we're doing okay. We shouldn't expect a huge windfall. We kind of knew that, but now at least we do have now that we have a little data to support that. But we're not going to sit on our hands either. I mean, we're going to try and make things better, continuous improvement. And, certainly, I guess I like the idea of at least getting some initial support to get things up and rolling.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to garner another $100,000. I think we're going to pick up another $20,000, $40,000, $50,000. And the biggest thing is, like I said, getting that, scoping out a project and saying this is what we want it to look like. And I don't want you guys developing a whole website. I want us to just scope it out, hand it off to an outside company, and
Sure.
have them do that for us.
So the software that you said we have in place is currently being used by the high schools?
Yes.
And so there's enough capacity on that software or the servers to expand it to the elementary schools?
Brandon, can we expand to the elementary schools? And I believe we can.
And who is maintaining that software right now?
Brandon, can you just come up? Brandon's our director of IT, for those of you that don't know Brandon. He's got also other titles, but we'll keep those, amongst ourselves.
Good evening. It's mostly maintained by the activities and athletics departments.
Okay. And then who maintains the schedule for the West PAC?
That is done by the West PAC director.
Okay, all right.
And that's what the community service piece that goes with that, because we do community theater out of that Performing Arts Center.
And have you talked to her about ideas on how to, because I think that's a huge one, that's a huge place that we can utilize. Have you, ideas on how to market it a little bit better?
And it's really just kind of having a strategy, which we've not really had, and just speaking to her of, where are we, she is at actually capacity 2, so as we looked at it, because, the thing with theaters is, as they're looking to do a production, well, they've got rehearsals, and then, they start building a set, and now you have a set up there. That's not like, these aren't portable sets necessarily. So now they're kind of stuck. So those are some of the things that we're talking with her about is, could we do something a little differently with that to allow for more flexibility? She is very flexible, and she's to maximize those spots. But sometimes you may think it's sitting empty. But it really isn't, because of all those things, pun intended, behind the scenes that you may not be able to encounter on the front end. But we'll continue to work with her for sure.
Is the software something you could put online? Is there an online component to it where you can book online and somehow it gets fed into that software? Or is there
Yeah, there's a module that you can add to it that's specifically designed for rentals, facility rentals. Right now it's basically just internal scheduling. And I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but I've done some research on it, and it appears to be able to meet our needs.
Okay.
If we go that route.
Yeah.
So.
Even internally, I know as a Girl Scout leader, I had to fill out paper forms each time I wanted to rent a room. And then you never knew if you got that paper form turned in first,
Sure.
if you were actually going to get the room or not. So just looking at ways to kind of ease that for the community as well.
That makes sense. Mm-hmm.
Brandon, is there a big cost to adding that module that would allow for online scheduling, or what are we talking?
I don't know the cost off the top of my head. I'll have to look at that.
Okay, and then also the other question is whether that module would include like an approval component so that we could make sure that the district had control over who the room ultimately went to, like if we had additional requests or something that would be preferred over another request,
Yeah, I think it's full featured, and
Okay.
It has layers of approval that you could set
Okay.
up, and it supports fees. It supports pretty much everything you need it to do.
So it sounds like we may not need to build out a whole new thing. We can just add a component, provide the cost isn't exorbitant.
Well, I think there's still the pictures, gathering all the information, the square footage, and then I think the UI of the actual landing page on the website of when you get there.
Yeah.
How is that developed? How does that all come together? 'Cause it's not just opening the software up and all of a sudden people can book stuff, right?
I know a lot of high schoolers.
You have to have a web page developer
Absolutely.
build the whole
Yeah,
thing.
and I don't know how complex it is, but picture-wise, a lot of high schoolers are looking for volunteer hours. There are a lot of them out there, so I don't know if they could go around, take some pictures, submit them.
Yeah, I don't think it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it's
Well, I think
tens probably. Or
yeah, it's nice to get this direct. I feel like we're getting some direction. Some of the things that I'm hearing is maybe bringing you what the our school module can eventually do. So again, initially we thought we'd have to go elsewhere to try and get something. Well, of course, Brandon's always listening to us, and he's like, "Hey, you might want to think about maybe using our school." which is what we're already using. So here we are, and so we can dig a little bit deeper and bring that back. You know, our goal is to maybe have some of this stuff up and running and changed as we go into the next school year, which means that we still need to be moving forward here rather quickly to start building some of that out. You know, please don't quote me on that. I see Kate jotting down, you know, July 1, and you know, okay, oh, okay. But you know, that's what our hope is for next school year, that you see some enhancements as we move into this, and then we'll also, you know, think about, you know, within our current staff and within our own means, you know, who could possibly already do this without it costing more money, and or having that half-time or part-time person be taken out of community service fund, so it's still not making an impact.
Yeah, because they're still going to have to someone that goes through all the approvals, check
Yeah.
the basketball league, and
Yep.
getting the basketball schedules put in there, because obviously they're not.
Yeah, so maybe not that full time that we were thinking where they could actually go out and meet everybody, but at least enhancing our efforts.
I think there's times when they're going to be 30 hours and then they back down to 5. I think it's going to be a pretty flexible swinging position, but.
Sure. So we can certainly bring more if that's what the board is interested in.
Yeah, I definitely think bringing the policy for our first read to a new, to one of our up-and-coming meetings on the alcohol as well would be good.
Okay.
Well. Yep. All right, item C was action items from closed session, which we have none. So that brings us to, right, I don't think we have any, yep. So it brings us to our future meetings and dates. Our facility meeting that we talked about tonight will be on Monday, March 16th at 6 p.m. in the district office conference room E. So there is a choir concert that night, but feel free to come before the choir concert. I think the choir concert's at 7 or 7:30. And then March 23rd, we'll have our regular meeting at West, preceded by a finance committee meeting at 5:30.
Right, and I just wanted to insert, I said the last meeting, my understanding was that Patrick was going to be out of town, so we weren't going to have that meeting. He is no longer going to be out of town, so we will have that meeting. So just so there's no confusion for anybody listening to this meeting, there will be a finance committee meeting on the 23rd of March, and you're welcome to attend.
On April 27th, we'll do our, fifth tour at Reagan Elementary with a finance meeting preceding that as well. And March 21st is Discover New Berlin from 9 to 2 in the West Field House. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Helmer, second by Ms. Manley. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Hands down. Motion passes. This meeting is adjourned.